we'll turn the program then over to Richard Cinclair. Richard is the president of the Texas Carnival Glass Club, I think, at least at the time.
Yep.
So anyway, we'll turn it over to Richard. Thank you very much, Richard, for bringing this with us.
We'll be out in time for lunch. No, actually, I wanted to start off this morning by talking a little bit about tradition. One of the things that we've been doing in the Carnival Glass conventions in the past few years is establishing new traditions. And one of them has been the midnight auction. And they've gotten earlier and earlier. And I just wanted to say to you, welcome to the midnight auction. I'm only teasing on that. I have for you at the end of the program a little reprint of an article we did in the Texas Bulletin a number of months ago. However, you people are certainly not afraid to take what you want, and I've noticed that most everybody has a copy, so I figured it must mean either you figure I'm going to be boring and you have to have something to read, or secondly, you're expecting it to get hot in here and you've got something to fan yourself with. I'm happy that you have them. As a matter of fact, I prefer to not have any left, so if you've got friends or relatives, neighbors, or new collectors that you would like to give them something about Carnival Glass, please take the extra copies. My wife is not with me today yet. And Smoky, I wanted to follow up on your situation. You know, Floyd calls people a lot of things, but I know one thing for sure, Smoky. He's never called you a yellow dog Democrat. And Floyd has called me a yellow dog Democrat, and I want you all to know I'm very proud of that. My wife, Carol, will be flying in tonight. I'm picking her up out at the airport at 6:44, and I should be back by 10 o'clock. If you've been to the airport, you know how far it is. Somebody's got to stay home and you know, have a reason for checks to be coming in at the end of the month, and Carol's it. She wishes she could be here, but she'll be here tonight, and then you'll have a chance to say hello to her. How many of you are here are from Arkansas? I know there's at least one couple. Well, when you have the President of the United States from your state, you take on a responsibility. And this morning, before we get started, we've got to lighten up a little bit. And I also need to know what kind of a crowd I'm speaking to. As soon as we establish the level of this fine organization, we'll get on with the program. The first thing I need you to do is take a reading test. And so I want you to look at a piece of paper that's being passed out, and then we will move on with the program and talk about a little bit of Carnival.
Are we going to have a final exam?
Yeah. There will definitely be an exam. If there aren't enough copies, you can maybe yeah, the really scary thing is that but some of you can read this.
Yes, I heard it.
Well, actually, I'll go ahead and get started on this because it'll take a couple of seconds. My wife works on a different college campus than I do, and through the inter-campus mail, she sent me a copy of Test 1, 2, and there was a different one for Test 3. And I looked at it, and not being from Arkansas and apparently not being very quick, I couldn't read it. So I threw it in the wastebasket. It made me mad. Then she called me and she said, "You want some help on it?" And I said, "No, I really don't." She said, "Oh, you could read it." And I said, "No, I couldn't read it." And she said, "Well, how do you know what it says?" And I said, "I don't. I threw it away." And so she said, "All right, I'll send you another copy." And she did help me read it. You know, when I picked it up the first time, it looked to me like it said, "Mr. Ducks, Mr. Knock, Sar, Sim Wangs, Mr. Ducks." That's what it looks like to me. But in reality, here's what it says. MR Ducks, MR Not, SAR, CM Wings, L, I'll be, MR Ducks. Test number 2 says, MR Snakes, MR Not, SAR, CM Beady Eyes, LLB, MR Snakes. All right, now I need a volunteer. I made this one up. This is a Texas reading test, test number 3. Who can do it? Come on, somebody can do it. Okay, Todd, what does it say?
MR Carnival, MR Not, SAR, CM Peacock's plates, all day.
All right. That lowered the level of this group about
It turned out unique.
Well, you know what? I've got one other story to tell you before we get going. You know that Texas has been in the news a lot lately, especially from a religious standpoint. And a lot of us from Texas, because of all of the things that are going on, apparently we've you know, gotten some extra powers. And the other day, I had a vision. And it was a vision way into the future. And it was okay because it was, about 70 or 80 years into the future. And my vision was St. Peter. And there were 2 people that had finally made their way to heaven. One was the Pope. The other was an auctioneer. The Pope was there first. And he came in and he said, "St. Peter, I'm the Pope, and I've died, and I'm glad that I've come to heaven, and I'd like to find my place." And St. Peter said, "Well, over on the 18th cloud, there's a beautiful one-story bungalow fitting for the Pope." And the Pope said, "Well, thank you. It looks wonderful. I'm happy to be here." Picked up his 2 bags and walked over. The auctioneer came up and said, "Hi, I'm an auctioneer." I can't remember the name, but St. Peter said, "Well, welcome. And your home is on the 3rd hill. It has over 10,000 square feet, all of the amenities. It is 3 stories high." About that time, the Pope turned around and looked back, and he saw this mansion. And the auctioneer said, "Well, thank you very much." And he picked up his 2 bags and he started over. And the Pope came back and he said, "St. Peter, I have a question for you." He said, "I'm the Pope, and I'm very happy with my home in heaven, but that auctioneer got a mansion." St. Peter looked at him and he said, "We've had popes before." but apparently y'all do. All right, two other quick things, and then we're going to get going here. One, as president of the Texas Club, I certainly want to invite you to our convention next February. We typically hold it in Houston, and we will again next year. We already have our speaker who spoke to you yesterday, Smoky Cloud, will be joining us. We have a wonderful little convention, and we certainly want you to come. Those of you that live in the north, that might be a respite from the winter for you. You are always welcome, and watch for it because it is a lot of fun. Secondly, at this point, I would publicly like to thank all of the people that shared in this program on Blue. When Bob asked me to speak about Blue, I said, oh, sure, no problem. And then I got on the phone and I called Bob and Faye Allaire and asked them to bring some of their fine blue, and they have. I've asked John and Lucille Britt to bring some of their blue, and they have. Bobby and Joyce Seal, Smokey and Betty Cloud, and Tom and Sharon Mordini. And so before we get started, would you join me in a round of applause for these folks? All right, now it's time to talk about Carnival Glass. One of the things that I think we look for in life are rules, guidelines. As a matter of fact, somebody came up with a guideline last night for me, and they said, why don't we do like Sherwin-Williams, a paint store, have a chart. And then what we could do is we could walk around with our little chart and walk up to something and put the chart up there and say, oh yeah, this is Renninger Blue. Well, it's an idea. I'm not sure that it's going to come to fruition, but maybe someday we'll get something like that. Carnival, as I talk to people who are just getting into it, I try and explain to them it's difficult. As a matter of fact, it reminds me of a friend of mine. This is not a funny story, it's a true story, sad story. A friend of mine and I used to build log houses. I don't know how we decided to do that, but we built log houses for a while. We were out on the track at the college one day exercising, and he said, you know, he said, I haven't done very well in the log house business, and I kind of like to find something else in terms of an investment, both financially as well as time. And he said, now I know you've been playing with antiques. And he said, I'd kind of like to get into that. And I said to him, oh, okay, that's great. Are you willing to spend your evenings reading, talking to people all over the world? Are you interested in glass? Are you willing to study? Are you, that interested that you would do this from an educational standpoint? And he said, no. And I said, do you think that you're going to do very well with antiques? And he said, no, I think I'm going to be a stockbroker, he said. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. If you don't love this, if you're not willing to read, if you're not willing to come to the conventions, you are not going to have the same amount of information, education as some of the rest of us. And as a result of that, when you see some of these fine pieces, you may pass them up thinking that they are common, thinking that they are not worth the dollars or whatever. And so education is very, very important. But this is not easy. As a matter of fact, as you go into antique shops across the nation, you know that many antique dealers will tell you that they don't carry Carnival unless they can get it dirt cheap, because it's too complicated. And it is. It is very, very complicated, and we just have to accept that. And I'm really pleased that you're here at a convention, because this is where you see things and this is where you learn. If there are any rules, it seems to me that one of the rules is that it must have super iridescence. You take a look at the glass that was talked about yesterday at both of the seminars. You take a look at the glass here. It's got excellent iridescence. The other thing, of course, that we're looking for is color. Blue, it seems to me, is the most complicated, and we are going to deal with the color blue in just a minute and all of the different colors. By the way, speaking of the telephone, have you ever tried to explain to somebody over the telephone Renninger Blue. It's very, very difficult to do that. I'm going to say one other thing, and I don't think we're saying enough about this, and some of you will undoubtedly disagree with me, but I'm going to say it anyhow. Damage. This glass is older than we are. It's been around for a long time. It is a fragile glass, and many times we will find wonderful pieces with damage on them. Is that a reason not to buy it? I don't think so. I suspect that all of us have some damaged glass in our cabinets, and I think it's okay. If there should be a rule, and I've thought about really going out on a limb and establishing a mathematical equation, because I think that we should. Is a little flake worth $200? If I could find that Hearts and Flowers pie crust edge bowl right there in the middle with that kind of iridescence on it, with a flake, should I walk away from that and say, I'm sorry, I don't buy things with damage? I don't think so. Not unless I already own that one, and I don't. However, I'm going to try and steal it later in the morning and see if I can't get that in my box. I think what we have to do is to recognize that a little bit of damage is okay. More damage is still okay. A great big chunk probably should devalue these pieces immensely. But somehow we've got to learn to come up with an equation so that we can live with some damage. There's not a whole lot of Carnival out there. Some of it that is this beautiful is just difficult to find. And I think my personal theory is I'm going to buy something with a little bit of damage on it if I don't have it. And if the next day I find something that is perfect, then I'm going to keep the perfect one. And I may keep the damaged one too, because people don't like damage. I don't know how, but somehow we've got to come to grips with the question of damage, and we can't do it this morning. All right, let's talk about blue. Blue is a common color, but not when you talk about Millersburg Blue, not when you talk about Dugan, in some cases, Imperial, Cambridge, which leaves us then pretty much with Northwood and Fenton. In the article I wrote a couple of years ago, I went into an antique mall one day and I saw little Fruits and Flowers, a matter of fact, a pair of Fruits and Flowers ruffled bowls. Dirty as could be, but you could tell they had some potential. The price was too much, and I walked out. But on the way home, in my little car, I kept thinking about those two pieces. And when I got home, I got into the auction guides, and sure enough, there was a reason why I kept thinking about them. The common blue is sometimes very uncommon. And in fact, those two little pieces I could only find one record of in the last 4 or 5 years, and they had sold for, I don't know, $400 or something like that, which is a lot of money for a little piece of blue. Yes, I went back and made the purchase, but by this time the antique dealer had thought that maybe I was right, that he had overpriced them, and so by the next day, if I would take the two of them, he would lower the price, and I was happy, and I guess he was happy, and when I scrubbed them up and found out that they were, if not electric blue, borderline blue, I was very, very happy. So this is part of that process then that I call the complicatedness of Carnival Glass. You've got to figure out what's common and what is uncommon. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is probably get myself in trouble, which is okay. in terms of naming blue colors. Everybody is not going to agree. If it's my piece, I call it whatever I want to. If it's your piece, you can call it whatever you want to. If you are buying, you're probably going to say, well, that's just blue. If you're selling, you're probably going to say, that's Renninger's blue. And that's okay. That's life. What we've kind of tried to do, and haven't done this completely, is we've tried to put some of the examples of the colors of blue on this end. And I'm going to start on this end. And then we just have some of the great pieces of blue on the other end. This is a Leaf and Beads rose bowl. And it is, we are saying, in a kind of aqua teal. Now, did you see how I got out of that one? A kind of aqua teal. This is a daisy wreath, Westmoreland, blue opal. And I think that we have to talk about two different blue opals. This is a Westmoreland, and typical for a Westmoreland product, and you'll see a couple of others up here. And as long as we're talking about colors, blue opal, you have to get up here and maybe take a look at this. But here is a grape and cable blue opal. And again, when you go into an antique mall and you see a piece of blue, you need to first look at it and say, wow, that's really pretty. But you've seen a lot of pretty blue pieces like this. Get up close, put your glasses on if you need them like I do, and then you will see the little opal tips. Price, what does it do to it? A lot. This piece of glass without the opal on it, I would say is relatively common. Pretty, but relatively common. I would think that the opal tips on this makes $1,000 difference. Now, that's an opinion, but I think that it does. Also, we have holly blue opal right here. And all you have to do is look it up in the auction guide. That piece of, not that one, but a piece of glass like that sold in an auction in the last couple of years, because I looked it up, for I think about $1,700. I guess it's probably more than $1,000 worth the opal on that bowl. Okay, this plate I call Sapphire. Grape and cable stippled variant plate. And it's just a pretty, pretty piece. But I call that a sapphire color. Okay? In the back, this is a wonderful example of Renninger's blue. If you can somehow put that into your brain, I think that the sunflower, this is Renninger blue. You find Renninger blue in a number of patterns, but I think that's Renninger blue, and that's a good example of it. So try and stick that away in your head. Here is a teal color, and this is Imperial, waffle block, good example of teal. This is a piece, I'm a Hearts and Flowers collector, and again, you got to pick up everything, you've got to look at everything, you got to look at the base in particular. Doesn't look so great on this nice piece, but it doesn't look all that unusual until you turn it over and you see that it's got an aqua base. Makes a big difference in terms of the value. Honestly, in our collection of Hearts and Flowers, and I try and collect 4 of everything in Hearts and Flowers, I try and get the compote, the ruffled bowl, the pie crust bowl, and the plate. This is the only one that we have in an aqua. Here's an interesting color that was brought in this morning, and to me it's a shade of a shade of blue. Peacock and Grape. To me, that's a smoke color. That's a smoke.
Richard, would you hold them under the spotlight
Yes.
so we can see the color?
Yes. Here is a very, very sad story because it has brought sadness into, I'm trying to get you on my side, in my family. Those of you that know me know that for 10 years I have been advertising for the saucer to this cup. And I know y'all, somebody out there's got it, and my birthday is in June. Christmas is coming. Surely somebody has got that saucer out there. You know, you can find the 2 sides up, you can find the 4 sides, the 6 sides, you can find them. But saucers are pretty tough. Little kitten's cup, I'm teasing. No, I'm not. If you've got a saucer, I want one. This is a ice blue, obviously. And some of you have heard this story. I was in St. Louis a couple of years ago at a woody auction, and my wife and I went to Gypsy Caravan, it was called, and it was like a flea market antique show out at some coliseum. And you know how we are. We got up early. We stood in line like everybody else because everybody else was doing it. And I said, Carol, I said, well, what do you want me to find? And she said, I would like an ice blue hearts and flowers plate. And I said, okay, no problem. So we went into the Coliseum and looked all around. And there were a couple of pieces of Carnival and also some collectors. Then we went outside, and it was hot. And she was starting to get tired. And so I said, let's split up the grounds. And so we did. She took this side, and I took that side. And I was going along, and I saw an apple blossom. I think it was apple, anyhow, a marigold water pitcher, which attracted me to the booth. And I went in, here it was. And the guy had a decent price on it. I don't remember, $600 or something like that. And I walked over to him and picked it up, and of course didn't put it down, asked him if it was perfect. He said, yes, it was. And he said, you know, they just sold one of these in an auction for, I don't know, $2,000 or whatever. And I said, really? He said, yeah. Anyhow, I struck a bargain with him, and I asked him for a brown paper bag because I was going to meet my wife back at the car, and I wanted to come up to her with my brown paper bag, and I did. I had it underneath my arm, and she said to me, what'd you find? And I said, an ice blue hearts and flowers plate. And she said, yeah, sure. I said, well, check it out. And so she opened it up, and there it was. So miracles happen or something, I don't know. Here's a little peacock and urn, blue Millersburg piece. You know that they're tough to find. I don't know, does it help if I turn, well, if I turn the light, then you're going to... Anyhow, let me say something about Millersburg and blue. Lots of times the pieces are quite light. Not always, but lots of the pieces are relatively light. And this is not dark, not real light, but Millersburg blue. 2 hat pins in blue. One of them is a rooster, and the other is the beetle or the scarab shell. And again, relatively unusual in blue. And this hat pin holder, and again, when you go into a mall, I mean, you can't tell from out there what color this is. You might suspect it's blue, and it is blue, but you can't tell for sure. And so when you see just an old grape and cable hat pin holder sitting out there, you need to go over and pick it up. If it's blue, don't put it back down. Just keep holding it, because if I'm right behind you, and if I find it and it's blue, I'm going to buy it, unless they know what it's worth. These are pretty rare. Blue Northwood grape and cable is relatively unusual. This piece is scale and fan. It is also a Westmoreland piece. and a good example of a blue opal. When we're done, please feel free to come up. Look, don't touch, because it's not all my glass. If you need to touch, ask an owner, and perhaps they will let you touch. This is a favorite piece of mine, and it's a good example of Celeste. And I was talking to Tom Mordini this morning, and he said, do you have an example of Celeste that is stretchy and a Celeste that isn't? This has kind of got a stretchy look to it. Persian Medallion, really, really pretty piece. If you feel it, it feels a little bit different. I don't know why. I don't know why. Maybe it was just made 3 days ago and not quite dry. Here is an interesting little teal piece. This is Louise. Many of you have seen the rose bowls. This is, I don't even know what you'd call it, a little-footed, unusual bowl, oddball shape, a teal, and it's Louise. Persian Blue, good example. Matter of fact, there's one for sale someplace in the show. Look at that. That to me identifies it as a Persian Blue. You can see it comes through right there in the center. Good example of Persian Blue. Eyeball color. This is, yesterday we were talking about two flowers and all of the different shapes and colors. Here's another piece that you find lots of shapes and colors in. Peacock and Fenton. Another kitten piece, and I brought this along as an example of Smoky Blue. Some of you might just call it crummy blue, I don't know. But there are two reasons I brought this. It's 4 sides up, which is not unusual, but it's got just 2 sets of kittens on it. And there are 2 different molds that were made. One with the 2 sets, one with the 4 sets. My wife is a kitten collector, and when I had an opportunity to buy that, I did, just because it was had the 2 kittens. And I brought it along because it's kind of a smoky blue. Here is a kind of a powder blue. It's a lighter blue. It certainly isn't a cobalt blue. And yeah.
Could you hold it up to that perforated part of the light?
Yeah, does that help? If I turn the light out that way, it's going to get you in the eye, so that's not going to be pretty either. It's a light blue. Again, a Millersburg, the Primrose. I'm not going to pick that up. Afraid if I dropped it, I'd be in debt for the rest of my life. It's not mine. Primrose and blue, rare as can be. As the piece next to it, and I'm going to pick this up because, and again, you see how deep the blue is in that? And remember, this is Millersburg Blue, the Dolphins. And they put all the dye in that day, didn't they? And that's not totally common for some of the Millersburg Blue. That's a great piece. This is, to me, this is another shade of blue. It's an aqua opal, obviously. And again, some of you heard this story about, I bought this about a year or so ago, and I've had prettier ones. But the reason I've kept this one is that I went into this mall, and a lady who is older than I am, and there aren't as many of those anymore as there used to be. But nevertheless, I'm 50 years old, and this lady was patting me on the head. And it reminded me of first grade or something. She wasn't, not that, but I mean, she was just talking to me like I was a little kid. And she wanted me to buy something. And she basically had new Fenton glass, and it was very pretty, but right out there in the middle of it was this bowl. And a good example of aqua opal, and of course I said, well, I'd like to see it. And a man working in her booth showed it to me, and I saw the price. God, I don't remember what it was now. I think it was $35. And this is only a couple of years ago, by the way. It gives you hope. And I looked at it, and I immediately started doing what everybody does, holding it to the light, turning it, feeling it, starting to dance a little bit, All of the excitement was, adrenaline, my heart's beating and the guy thinks that I'm trying to dicker with him on price. No, I'm trying to find the crack or the missing rose or something. And in fact, there's nothing wrong with it. But in the interim, he said, all right, I'll take $27 or something. I paid him cash, and it does happen. And so you can't give up. And you don't know. Lots of times when I leave HOGA or ICGA or ACGA or the Texas Convention, I think, everybody is out there. You don't know that 5 minutes after you go into the mall, somebody brings in this piece, and they don't even think it's Carnival because it's a weird color. This is a little peach sauce. Let me tell you what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the master. I'm looking for the water pitcher. I'm looking for the tumbler, and I'm looking for the table set. And so if any of you have any of those, I'd sure like to have them. Weird color, a Celeste color. Neat piece. Here's my part of my Sunday morning lecture to y'all. I bought this at a flea market in Dallas not long ago. Paid $50 for it. Concave diamonds. I thought it really had something. I thought it was an unusual sized water pitcher because Carol and I collect tumble-ups or guest sets, and I prefer to call this a guest set as opposed to the tumble-up because it's got the handle and so on. I bought this, I took it home, and immediately measured it against the Vaseline set that we had. And it was exactly the same, and that was okay. And I said to her, well, now I have a challenge, because this was not with it. And I figured, and I knew where there was one, but I think Floyd and Cecil have an alarm system on their house, and so. But while we were down there, remember I looked at your little tumbler. But here's my point. It's just like going into the mall on Sunday when you go home, or it's just like what you do next Saturday when you go out and you think you're not going to find something. How many of you, it's a rhetorical question, you don't have to answer, how many of you advertise in HOGA saying that you need a Celeste concave diamond tumble up or guest set tumbler or whatever you want? I do it every month, and you hardly ever call me. But last month, a nice lady from Marietta, Georgia, called me and said that she had one of these tumblers, and she sold it to me at a very fair price. Now, I put in my legal 10 every month, and I very seldom get a call, but I do periodically get a call. And so I'm telling you, use that service. It's a neat service that the club has, and sometimes it works. And so in really a matter of about 3 months, I came up with this piece, and I'm a very happy camper as a result of it. All right, let me show you one other funny story piece. This is a $500 piece, I hope you know. A lot of you will disagree with me, but I can prove it. Ice blue, Peacock and Urn, Northwood, individual ice cream. Well, let me tell you why it's worth $500. My son, my youngest son, is in the Army right now in Puerto Rico. But he used to come to the Houston convention in particular, went into John and Lucille's room, and I'm probably fudging on the story a little bit, but I think he found this there. I know he found it there a number of years ago, and he had good taste. And he said, Dad, I found something I really want. And I said, okay, how much is it? He said, $250. So we went and looked, and we talked about it, and he said, I really would like that, Dad. And so I said, all right. And so I paid $250 because he didn't have $250. And I said, how are you going to, pay me back? Because he always tells me that he'll pay me back. And he said, I'm working at McDonald's, and I'll get much paid. Well, as an educator, I'm always very willing to try and get my children to do well in school. And so I said to him, I will pay you $25 for every A that you earn. Well, he got himself in gear and did very, very well over the next several months and earned lots of A's and paid off this piece. Well, as he got older in high school, he began having a cough. And so one day he came to me and he said, Dad, the transmission is out. I need $250. Will you lend me $250? And I said, sure. And so I gave him $250. Several months later, he came to me and he had this in his hand. And he said, Dad, you know how you lent me $250 for the transmission? He said, I don't know when I'll ever pay you back, so here. This is a $500 piece. Moving right along. Fashion. Punch cup, blue, Imperial. Now you stop and think, how many Imperial blue pieces have you found? Not a lot. Rare piece. In the back, I'm not going to pick it up, that's my Bernheimer bowl in blue. Similar, on the other end, we've got the mini stars. This was a lettered piece. And again, it has good cobalt blue. Not an easy piece to find. Millersburg, of course. In front, we've got a, to me, what is the electric? Well, this is, I think, it's just, again, how do you explain when something is electric to people? I know what it is when I see it. How do you explain it over the telephone? Tough piece to find, by the way. Blue, grape, and cable, Northwood. And to me, that's the electric. As is the pie crust edge, Good Luck, sitting right next to it. Excellent, excellent piece. Here is a, we're calling it a raise. Some people, what else did we decide? It's sun rays. Some people call it a sun rays. And this is Westmoreland, I'm sure, isn't it? Yeah. And it's on a blue milk glass base color. Interesting, and I've purchased, this is not mine, but I've purchased pieces like this just to have the example. A neat piece. Okay. A couple of other kitten pieces here. Sometimes you wonder what a vase is. Is there such a thing? And is there, and the difference between that and a toothpick? Here you go. This is truly the vase. See how tall it is as opposed to the toothpick. Tough to find. This is a real hard one. I've seen a few in blue. I've seen a few in marigold. Other blue pieces, and some of these I don't think I'll pick up. I'll just talk about them. You can see them, a leaf and beads, absolutely outstanding. Next to it, this is not mine, but it's exactly what I was talking about when I told you I found at the antique store one day. Fruits and flowers, just great iridescence on it, and really rare in blue. You find them all the time in amethyst, but you just don't find them in blue very often. Good piece. I bought this piece not long ago. And I went over to Clint Fox's house recently, and I walked in. I had a couple of other pieces I was going to show him. And I thought, you know, I'll just take this along and show it to him. It's blue, grape and cable, Northwood, basket weave back. You just don't see them in blue. You see them in amethyst a lot. Well, I took this over, and I walked in, unfolded it, and I said, you know how you like to brag a little bit. And I said to Clint, I said, how often have you seen this? And he said something like, most every day. And he said, there's one just like it in the next room. But you don't see it very often, not in blue. It just so happened that Clint had one, and I had found this one. Of all of the pieces here, well, no, I shouldn't say it. Boy, I love that Hearts and Flowers pie crust edge up there. Isn't that something? Yeah, you talk about pattern, you talk about color, you talk about iridescence. Isn't that it? That is just an absolutely outstanding piece. And blue in Hearts and Flowers is, you can find the compotes. I put an ad in last month in Hoga about a blue plate. Nobody called me. But pie crust is even tougher than the ruffled, and that's a outstanding example of blue Hearts and Flowers pie crust edge. Here we've got a
Carolina Dogwood.
thank you. Westmoreland and in a blue opal. Another good example. And if you want a blue opal, look for Westmoreland. They made a number of pieces. A beaded shell mug. Again, pretty common in amethyst, but you're not going to find it in blue all of the time. And this is a good cobalt blue. Look at the plate again. Let me move over here now. Look at the plate. Again, color, iridescence, pattern. Most of us like peacocks. Peacock and urn Fenton plate, quite flat. And just look at the iridescence on it. Just absolutely outstanding. Grand Thistle, what, Finland? Blue, not very common. And, you know, don't be afraid of European Carnival. They got into it later than we did. They made some interesting pieces. Here's the mini stars. Compare it to the Bernheimer. Very similar, but without the lettering. Bob Grissom brought this piece in this morning. We don't know what color it is. And it's Peacock and Grape. I'm going to turn this light just for a second. It's not. Do that again. Thank you. It's yeah. It's got some green in it. I don't know. So maybe we could get a committee together this afternoon and come up with one more color of blue. Here's a little miniature flower basket again in a blue opal, Westmoreland. A state pitcher and creamer. Lots of times when I go into the malls and so on, I'll find one or the other, but you don't find them together, of course, very often. Neat pieces. Major dollar plate, the Homestead Newark plate in blue. It's an interesting piece. I mean, there's lots of mold work in it. Certainly a beautiful blue, nice iridescence, and of course it's Imperial. And one of the interesting things, it is heavy. One of the things that we seldom do when we're talking about Carnival is to weigh it. And I did that with a vase one time, and when I wrote an article about a funeral vase, I went and weighed it because it was quite heavy. That is a heavy piece. Another Millersburg piece of blue hanging cherries or cherries, tough to find. Up in the back row, a two flowers, similar to one that was here yesterday. Excellent iridescence, nice deep blue. Tough little plate to find in any color. Sailboats in blue, just flat as can be. One of the differences, I think, between Fenton and Northwood is how flat the plates oftentimes are, Fenton being much flatter. Here is a rare tumbler field flower in blue, super iridescence, different colors. I'm not going to pick up the poppy show for fear of dropping it. Electric blue. And one of the things, we were talking this morning about light. It's so nice when you can have great light on the glass. Did you notice yesterday how both the seminars, all of the glass looked really great? And it was fun for me after we got it set up this morning to go in the back and look up at it and see how pretty it is. Next to it, the horse medallion plate in blue. Not a lot of blue ones around. And I got the results of a auction the other day, and I saw a marigold one from, I think it was Lexington, that went for, I think it was $450, which is, you know, price is going up. Super pretty peacocks on the fence plate. Here's the little peacock tail plate. Interesting, just a couple of these around. Notice it is not iridized on the front, but it is iridized on the back. Periodically, you find some really strange little pieces that are not iridized on either the front or the back or whatever. A Virginia blackberry miniature pitcher in blue. Just a really, I mean, you just don't see these very often. Again, a Millersburg Blue hanging cherries. 3-in-1 edge. Millersburg, tough to find. A pine cone plate, hard to find, and although they're typically quite pretty, you know that they come in several sizes. Then some different tumblers. Again, these are all blue. The Lucille tumbler. How many of those have you seen? A little winged panels. What do you suppose? For jewelry or? Yeah, little. Yeah. So when you see these things in the malls and the shops, stop, pick them up. And if they're not expensive, buy them. Western Thistle, different kind of blue, again, foreign made. Unusual shape, pattern, and especially unusual to find it in blue. See if you can see how the, you can really see the cross marks on this. Octagon in blue, again Imperial, unusual. You see them in marigold. Here is a McKee pattern, and it's called Puritan. You are seeing some things here that are very unusual, rare pieces in terms of blue. Little toothpick in flute, in blue. See them in purple. See them in marigold. Some little nut cups in a celeste color, different shapes, different makers. This one is curved star in blue. And again, can you see that's kind of a different, it's not really a cobalt, different kind of blue. I think that's about it for blue. Now, by the way, in our Texas Bulletin, in our next meeting, we're going to talk about electric amethyst or electric purple. Here is an amethyst that a lot of people would look at and would think was blue. This is amethyst, but the iridescence, sometimes you will find pieces with iridescence on them that will make them look blue. And this is a good example of that. Bottom line, to me, in collecting Carnival Glass, is you got to enjoy it, number one. Number two, I would advise you, you didn't ask for this, I would advise you to collect what you like. It doesn't matter if it is blue. It doesn't matter if it's ice blue. It doesn't matter if it is peacocks. It doesn't matter if it's rays. If you like it, don't be influenced entirely by me or somebody else who says, oh, you got to buy red, or you've got to buy, you know, whatever. Bottom line is that you should invest and collect and enjoy what you like best. That's all I know. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If you didn't get one of the little flyers, I've got some extras. I would prefer that you take all of them, give them to your friends, neighbors, whatever. If you got questions, feel free to ask. After everybody leaves, and it feels like it's getting hot in here to me, please come up and look at the glass. You're more than welcome to talk to the owners and myself.